Hey, it's Pete. On today's show, we're going to catch up with Des O'Dwyer on our Past Players, Past Legends segment. We also have Craig Martin sitting in as a special co-host today to talk all things football and, in particular, the British Open preview. So let's get started.
Previously on the Game On podcast.
So, Tommy, from there, with the Crows starting, go through the start of all that, because there was millions of you guys there for training and trying to make the initial squad, of which you did. And we will get onto the folklore part and try and find out how much of that was true in a minute. But you go through that sort of experience with the Crows starting up, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough decision because one Macca had made it known that he wasn't going. Yeah. So, I mean, if he was sort of our, you could say a spiritual leader in the footy club, and when he says he's not going, it sort of makes you have second thoughts. I don't know what tipped me to say yes, but because me and Cornsey were never, I'd played on Cornsey before, and we were never great, never had much to say to each other. And Curls and I, we didn't like each other so much. So I don't think my chances of having a long career at down at Adelaide Footy Club was great. But
you've opened up there, because that was going to be the next question, Tommy. So you played the first game and played very well in the Crows' first game. And okay, the Crows that night were dynamite, and you can still argue were as good as they've ever played. And I think you guys just rode on the crowd and all that side of things. And we won easy, but you played very well on Dunstall. So then the next game we're playing Carlton. Now you got interviewed. I reckon it was the News back then, and all you did was honest and said, Kernahan had beaten you a couple of times.
Yeah,
and
he did.
Well, Jesus, not exactly harming anyone getting beaten by Kernahan. And there seemed to be a hullabaloo about how dare you have said that and gave Carlton confidence bullshit. It was for mine, it was a load of crap, and you seem to get your papers stamped a bit because of that. Did you? Yeah. Did you think that as well?
Right. I think you're right. I mean, I didn't.
Crazy.
I've only looked back retrospectively and think that, but I think McDermott being cleaned up in the first game as well. I was standing Brereton at the time.
I was trying to work that out.
Yeah, I didn't see him get cleaned up. So I'm not making excuses, but it's hard to go in there and someone into next week if you haven't seen the incident. So Curls, he had a bit to say. He wasn't terribly pleased on my reaction, and thinks I probably should have gone in and attempted to knock his block off and get 6 games. And I think that carried on to the next week. And
okay.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
And welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, and today I'm actually joined by 2 co-hosts. We welcome Craig Martin and obviously Malcolm back to the studio today.
Yeah, a bit of fun. See how this goes. How are you, Craig?
Yeah. Thanks for the invite, guys. Appreciate it.
We obviously want to talk golf with you a little bit later on, but we thought we'd get you on to talk, obviously, a little bit about Port Adelaide. But just watching Tommy Warhurst there in our previous segment there, unbelievable that, he didn't play more games for Adelaide.
It was crazy. I did not know whatsoever about the bit of Curly being pissed off that he hadn't belted Barrett, and I'm still totally flummoxed by that, and it takes a bit to stun me. I generally have heard most things around the traps over the years, and I knew about the bit for the next week where Curls had the shits that he complimented Steve, and how dare you compliment the opposition, which I still think's just childish, petulant stupidity. But yeah, I still can't believe that. Why is any player, let's remove who it was, why anyone of any club's going to get shitty because someone hasn't belted someone back?
Yep.
Yeah, weird.
It is weird. We're going to bring you in, Craig, here. Your thoughts on, obviously, the being a Port man, the Adelaide's first game that they were so successful against the Hawthorn and how that all transpired?
Yeah, well, actually, I just saw those video highlights. And thanks for showing a Norwood versus Port game. That was really appreciated.
Not a problem.
Well, actually, one of my first recollections of that rivalry, I was only 10 years old, but went to the 84 grand final. So that gave me a real insight into the rivalry, and obviously still exists. Maybe not to the same magnitude it used to, but there's a love-hate with the Redlegs. I mean, I fully respect Norwood, but actually, ironically, that first Crows game, Tom Warhurst, just watching that, he was a gun player, wasn't he? Like it
was weird.
Reminded me of maybe not quite up to Greg Phillips' level, but certainly, he used to dominate centre half back position.
A very good player. Like the fact he only played 2 games was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that first Crows game against Hawthorn, I was working at the SANFL, 91. I was working in the upstairs members bar, and knew it was going to be busy, but it was mayhem. Like, I'd never seen anything like it. So let's just say that shift was earn a beer that night, that's for sure.
It was the hottest ticket in town at that stage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a huge night. I probably did know you at some stage that night, mate.
Well, obviously, to beat the reigning premier, and you guys probably know I'm fairly good friends with Bruce Linder through golf, and it's for them to come out and put on that performance. What they win by 80-something points in the end, it was just, I think, yeah. And forget the allegiances at SANFL level. I mean, it was something totally new, and I mean, privately, I get reminded that despite being so parochial Port, that I certainly hopped on board with the Crows in the first few years.
There was nothing that night, Craig, right? So I caught up with Nick Rochella, and I went to the footy. So we're having a beer at the leg trap first, and go to walk out of the leg trap, and by pure utter fluke, we walked out exactly as Hawthorn were leaving the leg track, and incredibly walking from the leg trap through the car park past all the supporters and that. And so Matty Robran, I've ended up just walking Matty Robran the whole way, and Matty actually mentioned that on when he got interviewed on the Where Are They Now, because someone said, so you walked over? And he said, yeah, and I was just chatting with Malcolm. He said, well, can you remember the abuse? He said, well, no, we were just chatting away like per normal. Mm-hmm. And, so it was, when you think players walking through supporters who are on the terps, it was quite...
Well, that only really happens with Richmond these days, doesn't it? From Punt Road, obviously, over to the MCG.
Incredible, that. But, yeah.
And you mean the Lakes Hotel, Malcolm?
Yeah, sorry, the Lakes.
Yeah, I used to actually work at the Lakes, through the big 90s, and a lot of the Victorian clubs would stay there. Then Greg obviously put on that wing to get the clubs to ideally stay there. Unfortunately, lost the contract to the city, but many a time, like I remember having a beer with Wayne Carey, and obviously that was pretty cool. And amazing that first game.
And Tommy, obviously, like we started the segment, missed out on probably being one of Adelaide's good defenders for a period of time, just through a little bit of a misunderstanding. So it's
crazy.
Interesting. All right, mate, let's get on to Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, today we're going to talk the SANFL, the netball, the tennis, and we've got Craig obviously here for the golf. But to kick us off, the AFL, let's start off with Kenny Hinkley's press conference.
What do you think the difference was? I think their ability to execute in the bigger moments was better than ours. I think it was a reasonably close game. where they were able to put a bit more pressure on and they were able to transition a bit better, I think, and ultimately they stopped us from certainly having too many decent looks in our front half, and they were good enough to intercept the ball and transition a few more times than we could. But I think the stats are pretty accurate. They played pretty well today up here, and we're a little bit off what we've been, but that's probably more to do with the Suns than us.
Yeah, it was obviously the focus on keeping you out of the cuts. I guess they did that well.
Yeah. Look, everyone thinks that's all we do, but we explore the whole ground. If you have a look at the game, the whole ground, we took a lot of marks today, and but a lot of marks against the Suns is not necessarily a good thing. If you can't go inside your forward 50 with some speed, they are, everyone knows they're a really strong side defensive team behind the ball. It's the way Damien's coached for a long period of time.
Horn Francis had a difficult day. How do you try and coach him through that? You left him forward a bit. He looked dangerous a couple of times, but how do you work through that with him?
Yeah, no, Jason's a young player and he's learning all the time, and he's got to be better than he was today in some moments. There's no doubt about that, and we won't accept that that's okay. But he's learned a lot, but he's still got a lot more to learn, and I think that's clear when you got a young player who's developing. He's an aggressive player who seeks out body contact sometimes, and once you let the oppo get a look at it, they tend to come after you a little bit more. Jason's learning to deal with that, and he has to get better.
All right, obviously, Kenny talking about the loss to the Gold Coast Suns there. Craig, you're probably best placed here, considering I do see some of your social media posts there that you're down at Alberton quite a bit. What's the feeling like at Alberton, and where do they see the remainder of this season going?
Well, yeah, it's certainly been a yo-yo season.
Yeah.
After the Bulldogs, you go, okay, maybe we're back. You don't. I'm always flatliner. I don't get too excited or too negative. There's been instances this year where performance have been lacking. Certainly the Brisbane one, and that led to obviously the post-game issue, which don't need really to go through. But the frustration from a Port supporter is, you hear Chad Corns come out on the radio Friday night knowing that the way Gold Coast are going to combat our style and we need to avoid slow ball movement. Now, watching the game on Sunday, it was almost right from the get-go. It was like, here we go, chip, 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 chip.
Yeah.
Over-possessing the ball, kick it long, turn it over and get slingshot goal against us. So whilst I think the result was flattering to us, really. We were never really in it. It just hung around that 3-goal margin most of the day. And frustrating part is the previous week, they're moving the ball so quickly and getting the ball out the back of the Bulldogs. Now, to Hardwick's and Gold Coast credit, they knew how Port wanted to play and really put a combat to it. And we had no answers. You got such good kicks coming off half back, and you see guys like Kane Farrell kicking the ball 20 metres instead of.
That's what I said to you in that reply to you. That was my criticism. I thought, now Kane Farrell is a guy where any opposition should not want the ball in their hands, and I thought his decision making and the way Port played was poor, and Gold Coast in the end didn't care that he had it. Now, there were times just Port had to go and take it on and didn't. And I just thought they played into Gold Coast hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really comes down to as well, like our forward structure has been a concern of mine all year. I think I've said elsewhere on the radio that, Charlie convinced me on Thursday that he was looking really fit and moving really well, which I dead set thought he'd come back through the SANFL, but training's one thing and playing under pressure is another, obviously. So teams kind of know that Port under pressure will fall back to their old ways, and if you put them under the pump through the midfield, they, for whatever reason, they just don't seem to have the confidence up the ground that if I kick it to a one-on-one, my teammate's going to beat the other guy or make a contest and bring it to ground. And they just get lost. They don't seem to have a option B or plan B that, all of a sudden they'll drop the eyes and get on the lead. It comes in long and it's easily picked off and they go the other way.
I just thought Port picked one too many tall.
Yep.
Like Marshall, Georgeson, Lord and Dixon. You did not need four of them. And I just I would have played Rioli. I know he'd been out for a fair while, but I just thought you went too tall and played into the opposition's hands doing that.
I was at training on Thursday and watched, and obviously physically there's no issue there with Willie. He's over his calf injury, but you can clearly see that whatever's the issue is off the ground is having a significant impact on him. His body language was, now I won't criticise him because, hey, we all have our issues. So if the head's not right, the body's not going to be right. So it was good. Positive was good to see that he played for the Magpies and performed well. So let's hope that holds him good stead for this week's selection. But, I kind of agree. With George Yardis out, I thought they might have gone shorter. But and that's, Kenny going back to his old ways and the Charlie.
Do they become
ticket.
too Charlie-focused?
Oh, we have been for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Especially when the opposition's got Collins, who's their main defender. Like, take him on, make him run around more. Don't give him the big, bulky key forward, which is what he wants.
Yeah, exactly right. You look at, in the past, the players that we've struggled against, Pearce from Freo. This year, he literally dominated that, and Ryan. So they dominated Port. That game, Port were lucky to get out of it. Charlie, he's been a warrior, but unfortunately he's coming to the end of his career. He's really struggling with his ankles. You can see, struggle to jump over a jam jar. But heart of a lion, can't criticise him for that. But push comes to shove. It's his last year, and he's probably come back to give it one final crack post his suspension.
Mate, some quick rapid-fire questions like we like to do here. We'll start off, obviously, with Port Adelaide. Is the captaincy catching up with Connor Rozee?
No, I actually, I was really impressed with Connor, the way he took ownership for the performance after Brisbane. You could probably question Port going so young with the leadership, but really, there is a gap there between the Bokies and Ollie and back down to Houston and then to obviously Butters, Rozee. But, by all reports, Connor took ownership over that result and got the player group together, which, you look at Connor as a personality. He leads by example from a playing point of view, but he's a nice guy, blah, blah, blah. So he probably, leadership-wise, needs to show a bit more of that mongrel. Not everyone's like that. But in that instance, I think he's been carrying the injuries, obviously. We saw against the Bulldogs how good he is. 18 in the first quarter and 30-odd plus whatever. He's learning. They all are. I still think we're a couple of years away from our best. They've been in transition mode. We've missed our opportunity, potentially, from a premiership point of view. But, the nucleus is there for a really good squad for the next 5 years.
Well, speaking about that, the home run doesn't guarantee them a finals berth this year. They play Richmond, Carlton, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Fremantle. How many of those would you expect them to win, and how many do you think they can win?
Well, really, you look at those 6 games and the way the ladder is, you're going to have to win 4 to guarantee yourself a top 8. 3 maybe comes down to percentage, but 2 you're certainly you're booking your trip to Noosa. And really, Richmond, you're going favourites in that one, but really the other 5, certainly they're either 50-50s or you're going in as the underdogs. So they're going to have to snatch a couple. Certainly don't need to be reminded of the showdown record in recent times. So that's irrespective of ladder position. That's certainly a 50-50.
No, we won't do
that. And you look at the other 4, they're all vying for top 8 and top 4 themselves. So, it's going to be tough. Really, we'll get a good understanding where Port really sits. They could get on a run and win 5 of them. Fantastic. But they could also, at the same end, lose 5 of them. So, and that'll have major ramifications.
Yes.
In the big issue that's floating over the Alberton.
Last question on Port Adelaide. Obviously, if Port decide to part ways with Kenny Hinkley, who are the choices that yourself and maybe the supporter group are sort of looking at to maybe replacing him?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on national radio talking to Dwayne, etc., about this issue, and really, I think whether Ken was the right person to continue last year or not, that's a separate issue. But now let's look at where we are 10 months down the track. If Port goes pear-shaped, I can't see how he continues into 2025. And then the club, they've got to do their due diligence. So if that is Josh Carr with a senior mentor, Choco, Buckley, Chris Scott, whoever it may be, that could be the option. Or they've got to go out there. And I mean, like I said, you got a nucleus of a really good squad for 5 years. It would be appealing to any coach, whether it's Chris Scott,
big time.
I think we missed the opportunity last year with Damien Hardwick. I think I've been on record saying I believed that Ken was going to Gold Coast until the AFL got wind of Hardwick's availability. So, I think they just got to do due diligence and make the right decision. Is Josh ready? Absolutely, I think he's ready. Change is needed. You just see what that's done to Collingwood, what it's done to Carlton, what it's done to other clubs, where potentially a coach has stayed too long. Sheedy, Malthouse, they're all classic examples. They stayed at those clubs for too long.
Last one on Port Adelaide. Kenny talking right at the end of his press conference there about Jason Horne-Francis and obviously Zach Butters from the previous week in their on-ground frustrations. How do we view that as the players seem to be frustrated? Is that because of results, or is this because of coaching style, or is it a combination of both?
No, I just think it's a bit of white line fever. I think we're all guilty of that. I mean, I'm pretty placid, but get me on the golf course and I'm a different person. But, yeah, I mean, Horny last week, was a bit undisciplined, and, I mean, you can nip that in the bud. I mean, I've had quite a few people come out and say, hop on the bandwagon about the whole North Melbourne. You can change behaviour. It's pretty hard to change ability. So I'm not too worried about Butters they've got to nip it in the bud. Teams now know that they're going to react, so they're going to bait them. I mean, it's been happening forever. So, they just got to be better and ignore it. I mean, you look at, Buckley, you look at Lockie Neal, Cripps, they're all getting niggled. They just got to be better than that. They're young, they're learning.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to Adelaide. I know you probably don't want to comment too much on this, but we'll get Malcolm back here.
No, I'm happy to talk any footy.
No worries. All right. Well, let's play Matty Nix's press conference and we'll go from there.
How does intent and application change at quarter time? Also, when you needed it with the wet as well. So how did that change at quarter time?
Yeah, it was. Thank goodness it changed, because at quarter time it wasn't looking good for us. That's probably in the end the most pleasing part, was we were able to turn a game around, which at that point we were being convincingly beaten, not so much on the scoreboard, but definitely in the contest. So it showed some maturity. We felt as a group that game demanded a certain mindset, and we delivered it for 3 quarters, the second, third and fourth quarter, as good as we have done. So to be under pressure and turn it around, that was a really good growth game for us, an area that we haven't been able to do as well as we'd have liked to up to this point.
You emphasise that, or do you feel that a group or a certain group of players led that?
Oh, that's player-led. Yeah, that's... sometimes you need a timeout, you need the quarter-time break just to come together, and but they led that. They're showing some really positive signs in that space, right across the board, from the first gamer, through to Taylor Walker. Bondi comes in, he's probably one who could hold his head up high for 4 quarters of footy. And Taylor comes in and has a chat about what he's seeing, and then they're able to adjust and get it back on our terms. So, really pleasing.
So Matty Nix there, obviously looking at the small victories. They don't have too much to play for the remainder of the season, apart from a few individual players. But their young guns that have been given a go haven't let them down.
Yeah, that's probably one thing. I think it was just cliche city, the press conference coaches in general. I personally think you get stuff all out of them. I reckon they're a waste of time. Bond was a good introduction. Obviously, Thilthorpe coming on in the last quarter was positive as well. Yeah.
It was a bit of a risk to play Thilthorpe when potentially it was going to be wet.
Yeah, but he had played 2 games in the SANFL. That's why I was a bit surprised. If he hadn't played at all, I get the bit of being the sub. But the fact he'd already played 2 games in the SANFL, I didn't really understand it in that regard.
Yep.
So it wasn't like he hadn't had a run.
Yep.
Look,
and Saligo, it was his night to shine a little bit with no rank in there, a bit of a wet contested ball situation. So
I thought for a fair bit of that game, it showed that it was 14 v 15.
Yep.
That's probably more the realistic side.
The weather conditions didn't help
that.
Oh,
of course it didn't. But
and Ross's coaching philosophy doesn't help that either.
No, his philosophy and he'd love to play a game of soccer and win 1-0, Ross. So yeah, in that way, but I still.
Yep. Was the Thilthorpe decision not to sing the team song a bit of a storm in a teacup?
Of course it was. Like, he's got Ks to do. They don't want anyone cooling down. Every other single side would have done the same thing.
Yep.
Now, I'm sorry, Adelaide have paid all this money for Burgess. Well,
make use of him.
Yeah, he's the one you're going to listen to, and he said no. That he's got to get the legs in and do it continuously.
Yep.
Mountain out of a molehill, get on with it.
Yep, fair call. Adelaide obviously need to look at boosting their coaching stocks. I know it's still pretty fresh in a lot of people's minds. Does Adam Simpson become someone in calculation as a senior assistant for Matty Nix?
Oh, look, maybe. The person I still will continue to go back to, I can't. Nathan Bassett only left Port Adelaide because they had to give someone the bullet, and he was the one whose contract was up for renewal. How Adelaide didn't interview him this year, I will still never understand. And for mine, he's still the obvious person. That's how I feel. But yeah,
I'll bring Craig. I'll bring Craig back in here. Would Port Adelaide potentially Josh Carr with Adam Simpson? Could that be a possibility?
I think I'd be surprised. I don't think Josh would move his family back to WA so soon after he's moved back to South Australia. So the one that I'm hearing is Brett Montgomery might be a chance to come back to Adelaide, even though he's at GWS. His family is still living here in Adelaide, so he might come back to Crows.
Craig,
yes.
I am trying to remember. I should have done it by now. I'll make sure I've done it by next week. Is Louis? Is it this year's draft or next year for his son? I think it's the.
For who? Sorry.
On Brett's son, Louis Montgomery. I'm trying to think whether it's this year.
I don't think it's this year because he hasn't really. I know there's a few of them. Schofield, Rome Burgoyne, etc. I think they're next year. Yeah, because I haven't really heard.
I'll do that by next week because he's. Yeah. Port are going to have a decision to make there. Look, I think,
but they don't know because of the draft pick situations that the AFL have come out with and going, "Oh, we're going to change it," which is bizarre.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, well, that's a totally different issue, isn't it? Which you can certainly point the finger where that's been beneficiary towards. But anyway, of course they'll change it because now the interstate clubs have got options.
Adelaide's move to Thebarton once again takes a step moving forward, Malcolm.
Yeah, and breaking news, Charlie Cameron's ban upheld for the 3 games.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in our hot topics. So you've put that.
Yeah, it was actually.
Yep. So that's just come through.
Actually, at Thebarton last night.
Yes, I did see that, Craig. Good luck to you.
Yeah, so let's just say, well, actually, the SANFL, they're out of there in September, and you can already see that things are starting to progress. But you can also see clearly why, like the function area and the facilities are a knockdown job. I think they're keeping the grandstands, which the grandstands are fine, but they'll need refurbing, of course. But you can certainly see it there. But we'll touch base on the reason I was there a bit later, no doubt.
Yep. Adelaide's home run with Essendon, Hawthorn, Geelong, Bulldogs, Port and Sydney. How many do they win, and is it worth it? Because you've got to think about draft picks here.
Yeah, I think at the moment St Kilda have the easier draw to come home. I think St Kilda end up finishing in front of Adelaide.
Yep. And
that's really the only one. I think everything else is too far. Richmond, North Melbourne aren't going to catch Adelaide. So I think that's the one. So I think in that way you just keep going. I just think, St Kilda play West Coast this week. They've got an easier draw than
Yep.
Adelaide, so I'd be surprised if they didn't finish in front of Adelaide.
All right, let's take a quick look at a couple of results. The Geelong getting up over Collingwood in a little bit of a surprise, but not in the end, because Collingwood look like they've lost a little bit of their mojo or their want, will and desire.
Oh, I think their injuries have caught up. They've had a huge run. Like, they probably lack key forwards, and so McStay's obviously, does the knee at the knee reco. They rely a lot on Brody Myercheck, and he's had a horrific year for injury. And so I think in that way they played a bit of the old Richmond style and just move it on and play chaos ball, and it worked for a fair while. And they did have stages in that game where they controlled but didn't hurt Geelong on the scoreboard.
Yep. Hawthorn getting up by 13 points over the Dockers. We talked about it being an 8-point game, and Freo really needed to consolidate, but no one wants to jump into the top 8 at the moment.
Fine line there. Amos misses. They've hit the front. Amos misses, kicks that. They're 2 goals up late. That probably would have been enough. Yes. Andrew did head home from Norwood, went home, watched that, and came back to Norwood. Yeah, he was a bit down when he got back. Yes.
Yep. Fair enough. And Hawthorn are probably the best ranked 13th or 14th side, 13th side in AFL history or AFL VFL history. They're a bit unlucky not to be in the top 8, really, winning, 6 out of their last 8 games or 5 out of their last 7 games.
And they should have beaten Port here. If they beat Port here, then they were still right in it. That was the game there where they lost. Port didn't, Port grabbed a win from the jaws of victory. So it was well done by Port, don't get me wrong there, but Hawthorn stuffed that up.
Craig, you would have been a bit worried with Hawthorn's form that day?
Actually, I'll be honest. Even when we kicked the goal with 40 seconds or 30 seconds to go, I was actually texting someone to go, "What a lost opportunity!" So, and that person might have been on air at the time, Malcolm, so you know who that was. And then it happened. It was like, what the? But Hawthorn, like, wow. I mean, really, everyone thought they were doom and gloom for the next 5 years. Well, not the next 5 years, but next couple of years anyway. And they've just unblooded. And I mean, Sam Mitchell, he's always been a student of the game when he was a player and whatnot. And, he's a perfect example. He's done his time elsewhere, come back to his club, and he's making an impact big time. They're great to watch, and they're getting show any disrespect, but no-name players who are the ones driving it. And all of a sudden they're going to be names because everyone will know who they are.
Oh, I tell you what, Will Day, though, he's going to go. Look, he's a very good player now, but I think he'll end up as one of the elite.
I mean, both Port and the Crows were trying hard to get him back a couple of years ago and failed. So,
Sydney back on their winning ways against North Melbourne. Nothing really too surprising there. The big one for me, being a little bit of a Carlton man, the Bulldogs getting up over Carlton by 14 points. Where did this come from? Because I didn't expect the Bulldogs to perform at the level that they did, but losing a tall up forward gave Hugo Hagen a bit of an opportunity to be the main man, so to speak, and it reaped rewards for them.
Yeah. Won't see on that one in term just where it leads in the long run though.
Yep. So, well, there's a lot of changes that could potentially happen at the Bulldogs as well. Yes. Beveridge is still under a lot of pressure, isn't he?
Hugo Hagel, though, that's probably the game where he stood up the most. Like Norton out, and they went smaller, and it paid dividends.
Yep. And unfortunately, Cripps in his 200th didn't get the chocolates.
No.
Adelaide, obviously, like we've talked about, getting up over St Kilda. Melbourne back on the winners list over the Essendon. We talk about Essendon most weeks. Do we trust them? Do we not trust them? We were sort of in the slightly trusting them the week before. They then lose to Melbourne, and all of a sudden, I don't know whether they can make the top 8 as well. Yeah,
there's a big game for them this week. Like, they should beat Adelaide, well and truly on Friday night, but you just don't know what you're going to get from them. Thilthorpe's it's going to be his first full game back under the roof.
On a slightly harder surface.
So obviously he gets McKay, which then means Walker doesn't and Fogarty doesn't. Suddenly they do look a bit more dangerous. So, see how they go.
be interesting.
It's the beauty of this season, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Like you look at Melbourne without Petrarca and certainly without probably arguably the best ruckman in the competition to come out and beat Essendon, but Essendon just time and time again. I mean, I'd nickname them the paper planes to a couple of mates because they're bombers sometimes, quite often under the pump they turn into paper planes, and their record against top 8 teams is pretty horrendous. So they've been favoured by a rather generous draw this year. But Carlton's prime example. Every team's had peaks and troughs. I think it's only a little blip for Carlton. They'll be up there.
Well, they've got to fix their defence. That's their biggest problem at the moment. They're leaking a little bit too much and a little too easily.
It's ironic. They need McGovern.
Yeah.
Really do. He's a vital player.
Yeah, definitely.
Just with his body.
Well, him and Wiedering, they're the two,
they
aren't they?
Yeah.
GWS getting up over a very determined Richmond in the end. It was a close game for a little while, but then Toby Green is just he's an unbelievable player. He hasn't played much, and all of a sudden he comes and dominates again.
Yeah, well, he's been inconsistent this year. He's been a bit down. It was a weird game that I think Richmond ended up with 17 more inside 50s. You don't often win a game with only 36 inside 50s. So when Gold Coast went in forward, they scored.
Yep. But that can be a little bit misleading as to shallow entries versus slightly deep.
Decent entries.
Exactly. So that can be a little bit misleading at times, but I agree with you. At times
it is. Where Green and Hogan were very good for them, and Richmond were poor defensively. Where up the other end they did have a fair few opportunities, and kicking for goal was average.
Yep.
Hopefully they kick better this week, Richmond.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to finish us off, obviously, with around the Lions on a bit of a winning streak at the moment. I know they're only playing the West Coast Eagles. No disrespect to the Eagles fans that may be tuning in, but they did peak a little bit after the Simpson speech, I suppose, before the game, and Brisbane it's a long trip across the country, so Brisbane had to get the job done, but they only got it done by 13 points in the end. Good result.
Look, they did the job. Always that, the caretaker coach that first week. We all know the record.
Yep, the bounce.
The bounce that it does have an effect to some extent. So look, they got the job done.
Yep.
And,
I think you got to give credit to Jared Schofield. Like he came in and put a bomb under the joint and dropped Darling, which is probably well and truly overdue, and basically made a statement by doing that. So he was very, very, very highly regarded at Port Adelaide before he left. Was probably next cab off the rank if Ken did move on. So I think he certainly would be in strong consideration for the West Coast job. But
it is his apprenticeship, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and that doesn't always go to plan. We've seen that in the past. It's worked well for guys like Mark Bickley and Primus and whatnot, but can also go the other way. So, but I think he's very strong disciplinarian, a bit like Kingo is at GWS, and I think he'll make some improvement for West Coast.
Yep. All right, let's talk round 19 games. Just some quick tips off of both of you guys. Essendon v Adelaide.
Essendon.
Yeah, you'd think Essendon, but wouldn't surprise Adelaide.
Yep. Giants v the Suns in the.
I won't tip Suns in a away game. Giants.
Yeah, Giants.
St Kilda v the Eagles.
St Kilda.
Yeah, well, there's a prime example. I mean, it'd be good for footy if Saints lost.
It would be. Hawks v the Collingwood Magpies. It's a tough. This one's a flip of the coin.
I'll go for Collingwood.
Where is that being played? MCG?
MCG.
I'll go for Collingwood, but with no confidence.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd probably go Hawks at this stage.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go Hawthorn as well. Yep. The Cats, Geelong v the Bulldogs down at GMHBA Stadium.
Since it's at the Cattery, Cats.
Yep. Yeah, Cats have righted the ship in the last few weeks. Yeah, definitely Cats.
Scott is a fantastic coach, isn't he?
Oh, Dangerfield back has been vital.
That helps, but just some of his moves.
He's a good. He is a very good.
And they've unearthed some good players in Dempsey and
that other kid. His third game was very good.
But you put Dangerfield back in there, bring the Rolls Royce back helps.
Absolutely. Port Adelaide v Richmond at the Adelaide Oval, mate.
Port Adelaide.
Port, but these are the danger games for Port when they're expected to win. It's happened against the Tigers before where they've beaten us in similar scenarios, so they need to bring it.
Tell you what, if they win, it's going to be interesting. If Port lose, geez.
Look forward to Talkback Radio.
Yeah.
I won't be on it.
Yeah. we might have to go live every day next week if that does happen. We'll have to plan that all in. Brisbane v Sydney at the Gabba.
At the Gabba, Charlie Cameron now out makes that thing. Since it's at the Gabba, I'll go the old, if in doubt, go the home side, but it's a real toss to coin. And Heaney back for Sydney.
Yep.
Cracking game, probably a preview to a prelim potentially.
Yeah,
so
potentially.
Yeah, I think Brisbane.
I think it's Brisbane's first big test really for a good 4 or 5 weeks. So this will sort of see where they're at.
Huge.
I'm going to go Brisbane at home as well, but Sydney are just too good everywhere at the moment. The Dockers v Melbourne.
Dockers, since it's at
Optus Stadium.
At Optus, yep.
Yeah, Dockers, I mean, they're going to be scary in the next few years with their draft picks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Dockers there as well. And Carlton v North Melbourne.
I'll go Carlton.
It's not going to be easy.
Carlton's good. Yeah, Carlton, but it's good to see the Kangaroos are starting to show promising signs.
I saw an interview with Alistair Clarkson there on Monday night I think it was on the couch on Fox there. He changed his way of thinking about at the halfway point where they had the bye, saying that he didn't feel like he was completely invested because of everything that had happened at Hawthorn, in that he didn't want to get burnt again. And he sort of threw that out the window and said, no, I'm with you guys on this journey 100%. And now they're repaying him in spades, but they're also getting games into their young players.
Young ones, yeah. Probably a little bit, they would have liked to have been a little bit more competitive against Sydney, but was Sydney in Sydney. Look, well and truly, forgive them for that. It'd be good to see them be really competitive again this week against Carlton.
Yep. Yeah. So, I don't want them to be
absolutely.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to some hot topics. We'll make them pretty quick. Is the final 8 is far from set? Who do you think doesn't make it from here?
I just think it's just so much for lottery.
Take a punt, mate.
At the moment, I'm leaving Port out, which I just can't believe. So I'm saying that from a few weeks ago, but they've just been such yo-yo. I'm still not convinced that Essendon are going to make it. So still probably do. Western Bulldogs, I'll probably leave Western Bulldogs out. I still don't trust them enough.
So does that mean Gold Coast get in? And do Hawthorn actually jump out of 13th spot and actually find a spot in the finals?
I think their percentage is going to hurt them there.
That's correct.
Lottery. I'll need it. I'm going to go through it and have a look at games to come, and I might have a decent crack next week.
All right, let's do that. What do you think, Craig? Who do you think makes it and who doesn't for you?
Well, obviously, I said earlier today, actually, I actually would really like Gold Coast to make the 8.
Yeah,
it'd be great for the sport, great for their franchise club. I mean, I really think Port are a 50-50 at best, really, making the 8. At their best, they make it, but I've got no, and I'm pretty positive, I've got nothing to really go right yet. No, we're there because we're getting the same old. So
we just can't trust Port.
Well, they're like
exactly right. It's I mean, and I think with the run in of the 6 weeks, I mean, you throw another draw into that mix, and like all hell's going to break loose. Yeah. There's going to be upsets. I mean, it is going to be an amazing finish. I think I kind of remember back to the VFL days, and it came back down to a game for Footscray, had to win to make the 5 or whatever it was back then.
Yes.
And it was like, I think it's going to come down to that last round, which for whatever reason, AFL, there's no games in Adelaide. Hello. In round 24, which is totally okay. Yeah, no, it's not fixture. Yeah. Anyway, separate issue, but I just think, that's got an amazing finish to the season.
Well, let's look at the 2 teams that have probably got best placed percentage-wise outside of the 8, and that's the Western Bulldogs and Gold Coast. And the team that's in the most amount of trouble, who is in the 8 at the moment, is Essendon.
Yeah. So
It's if you're taking one of them out, it's either the Gold Coast or the Bulldogs that come in, unless Port can get on a run, which their percentage isn't too bad either. But it's a long way back from here.
Dude, if I'm Gold Coast, I'm on the beers Friday night. There, come on, the Crows. They'd be jumping right aboard.
Absolutely. All right, the chicken wing tackle. This one's more in your wheelhouse, Malcolm, with the umpiring. What are your thoughts? Unintended consequence with the holding the ball rule?
I think it is, and they haven't really, typical of the AFL, do one thing and it creates another problem.
Because this change was made mid-year.
Yeah. And look, I thought Toby Bedford was pretty unlucky. Ironically, I thought Cameron was guilty. I thought he didn't have to drive him into the ground there. I think he could have done that tackle better and attempted to roll.
Mm-hmm.
If he'd attempted to roll, he would have been okay. But he did drive it right in, sort of more the NRL side of things. So I'm not surprised that he did go.
Yep.
If I'd made the prediction before the start of the night, that would have been my call thing. I find it interesting that Gold Coast are challenging Davies one. Unless that's just trying to get it downgraded from 3 to 2. That's the only thing I can think of there. So,
what are your thoughts, Craig, on those decisions that were obviously handed out after the weekend, and now we're getting confirmation right at this moment that players have had their.
I don't know if I can recall a season where we've had so much Monday, Tuesday. What the hell is going on from AFL House, whether it's MRO, umpiring. I mean, the chicken wing first came to prevalence back, Chris Judd did it from memory, I think.
Yep.
And 100% that is now, right, if I ping the arm, how's it going to get I've got a chance, and it's simply from the rule change. So, coaches and players are always going to try and bend the rules. Obviously, you only have to get one player injured from it and all of a sudden they'll nip it in the bud. But, I mean, this season, like MRO, you can't tell me a player off the ball can run past and elbow someone in the head and get 1 week.
Yep.
And yet, I 100% agree on the Bedford one. That looked like he actually showed precaution. It was unfortunate. 1 week maybe. Cameron, I agree. The other player you just mentioned who hit Lockie Jones, I can't see him getting that downgraded. It was front on.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, but I mean, some of the decisions that are coming out from the MRO, I mean, as I've called it, it's Monday last with Laura that comes out, and it's a weekly sitcom.
I think I'm pretty firm on this with being involved enough and knowing. I think Michael Christian, I can generally work out his gradings. Now, what the parameter and system he works with, I think he's way better than what Nathan Burke was. But I can work that out. I think it's the system.
Yep.
And then, Laura Kane, basically I think they've taken her off there because she was just so out of her depth.
Yep.
I've never seen anyone in any field of any employment so far out of their depth. When she went to speak, it was just ridiculous.
So my question is that obviously players don't know what they can and can't do because they've had to try and readjust mid-season. Have we gone backwards? Or is this a case of going backwards to go forwards?
It was interesting to hear Phil Davis today. And Phil Davis is a bit of a voice of reason. He's a very astute individual.
Yes,
where
I actually did hear this,
Yeah, where he pointed out how less cases have gone up. So that's so vital with concussion being the thing and litigation along that. So I think that's a progressive step forward. But, the ones like Bedfield, the Dangerfield one, and then Bedford tonight, they're the ones which I'm looking. I get why Michael Christian's sending the tribunal, but it needs to be
a football collision or a football tackle versus something that's a little bit more forceful.
At the moment, it's a bit of Russian roulette in that way. I think Christian's judged them exactly how I would have.
Yep. But he's,
so I've got
he's
no
doing
problem.
it via black and white.
Yep.
Tick the box, black and white.
Right. On the Boxers side of things, I've agreed with both of those decisions. Would I have, as far as I'm concerned, Bedford wasn't guilty, Cameron was. That's how I felt before tonight started.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yep. No, I agree with that.
Brownlow predictions, gentlemen. Heaney obviously getting suspension last week opens the door. Just a quick one or two. Who do you think, Malcolm?
I've got Cripps versus the Bont at the moment. I think Goulden and Heaney and the other
Papley.
No, the other Sydney on board.
Warner.
Yeah, Warner.
Warner.
I think they'll take votes and all that. I think Heaney will be in front after about 10 rounds. Like Heaney's first 6 games, he could potentially have 18 votes after 6 games, which is just ridiculous.
Would be the highest in AFL history.
Yeah, so...
so you're Bont and Cripps?
Yeah, I'm Bont and Cripps.
What about yourself, Greg?
Yeah, I did say on the radio, I was talking about it on SEN, and they were talking about Horn Francis and Butters. And Butters, to me, had a better season last year. This year, he's put up with the niggle and stuff. Had more impact. He's still been very good, don't get me wrong. But, Patrick Cripps, I think, has had more impact than Bontempelli. I mean, I saw it firsthand down that end in the last quarter against Carlton. Like, he just tore us apart with the clearances and then kicked a couple of goals on top of it. So, he's, for the size of it, his body and his athleticism, like, he's just such a superstar.
And the other one is Lockie Neal's in the equation still well and truly.
What I was going to ask is Lockie Neal could potentially
he
be
could
up there to
a
triple Brownlow medalist.
Yep, no doubt about that.
Yeah, the other smoky could be Nick Dacos.
Yeah, he's probably fallen away a bit in the second half of the year. I think he could be right up there early, but I'd be surprised I'd be surprised if he scored any votes.
Whereas Neal was sort of a little bit the other way around, a little bit slow to get going, but
he's coming
hard.
Yeah, he's full.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dacos last year was probably the same. This year he seems to be trying to get a bit more low-hanging fruit and not having the impact he had last year. Don't get me wrong, still, he's in the top 3 players in the comp.
But they are playing him more in the middle, whereas his role last year was a bit more off the half-back flank. So
and he's received far more attention this year. Sides are obviously playing him pretty tight, and he's not quite having the same impact.
Let's move on quickly. A couple of last-minute topics here. Gold Coast have an unbelievable record now with wins at home and losses away. It's an unbelievable stat. How does that happen?
Yeah, it's bizarre. But the first thing Malcolm Blight did when he got at Adelaide, ripped some grass, threw it in the air and said, all ovals have got this and they've got goalposts at both ends. Do not want this crap with Adelaide away. And that was the first thing he did. The next thing he did was tying shoelaces.
Mm-hmm.
And Goody and a few guys said it was just incredible. They said they'd never thought before
that would make such a difference
to tie shoelaces. But in terms of that, they're thinking, what in the hell is this guy going to come up with? And it was. It was on the ride from there. So, yeah.
Do we see Gold Coast pinching one away? Maybe 2?
The North Melbourne game last week is still the game which may cost them a spot. Huge game this week against GWS, because GWS, until last week,
they're a talented team without getting the results.
So, and, so that's just a huge game this week. Wait and see.
Yep, definitely. And gather round dates have been set. April holidays leading into Easter. Flights and prices of hotels have gone through the roof already. Are we bastardising it?
Yeah.
Not we are, but are
everyone else is.
Yeah.
Look, I'm driving. If I'm coming from Victoria, I'm driving. I'm bugger that. I'm not paying that ridiculous flight price. So, yeah. See what happens.
Anyway, what are your thoughts on the gather round, Craig?
Oh, it's fantastic, actually. It's good. I think it's great that they're branching out to the Barossa next year. Actually, not long after they got wind, that might have been happening. I was actually up there for a night to Nunda, and we hopped back through Lindock, and you could see all the ribbons were all on the trees, and saw the aerial photos recently. It's obviously spending a lot of money and whatnot. It's an interesting option for a venue in the Barossa, but Gather Round's magnificent. I mean,
Best
what it's done for
us.
It depends on what sport you're talking, but
Well, if you're selling books, mate. If you're selling books.
Best.
There's a lot of new targets that week for the book, but it's magnificent. I mean, maybe that's why we don't have a game in round 24. They say we get too much of an advantage with gather round. Maybe, I don't know, but
I still think.
I think we could argue that one until the cows come home with the Victorians. But going to Marvel.
Lawson Humphreys was the one Well, I couldn't think of his name earlier.
Yes.
He was fantastic.
For
he
Geelong.
was brilliant on Friday night.
Geelong was in the Rising Star nomination
Yeah.
for round 18. Lawson Humphreys, 3 or 4 games for Geelong, but really making an impact, that's for sure.
He did. He was
I mean, that's the one of the things with
calm and assured on Friday night.
I mean, that's the one of the things with injuries, though. You take gun players out of any team, you're going to struggle. But it unearths these kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, I watched a lot of training at Port, and there's some really good talent there, but they just, they're bereft of opportunity because of where they sit in the pecking order. So it takes injury or form for them to get a go, and all of a sudden you unearth a guy like you said, Humphreys, and you go, wow.
All right, mate, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk the SANFL, the netball, the tennis, but we're going to get you back, Craig, for the golf.
No problem.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Are dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
We thank Roger, obviously, for his kind sponsorship of the podcast. And as we put a bit of a shout out each week, any businesses that are looking to promote their business, get in touch, that's for sure.
And if you have a praying or know of anyone having a praying, please point them in the direction of Roger Steen Crash Repairs with Craig Steen. That would be massively appreciated.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the SANFL round 14 games. Adelaide going down to Norwood at the Parade.
Yeah, Norwood were very good on Saturday. I thought it was a case of just Adelaide were good. Norwood were really good. I didn't think Adelaide were average. They were clean. Probably the disposal was probably the best it's been all year. So, yeah, it was a real big tick on Saturday. Boyd beat Strawn. Baden Lode continued his fantastic form.
Well, speaking of Baden Lode, do we factor him a little bit in McGarry calculations this early? Because there's a few players that might take votes off of him as well.
Yeah, I think him and Boyd and Lowe are the two there. It'd be interesting to see Bain. There was interest with Bain in the mid-season draft, and he didn't get picked up. Same with Matty Ling, same with Billy Cootie. Well, let's just say they're not hurting their chances
moving forward.
Yep. And also Bain Lone is a Tasmanian, so It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Absolutely. Were we surprised with Adelaide's performance considering the last couple of weeks have been better, or is it a case of a couple of personnel changes and all of a sudden they don't look as strong again?
Oh, as Craig was about to say with Port getting up, all of a sudden if you've got those there were 3 less AFL listed players and it showed.
Yep.
A couple of the top-ups, young kids with a bit of promise. Geez, one of them, I reckon, I couldn't believe it because I walk through that area when I leave through it.
Yes.
On my way over to Norwood from the scoreboard.
Yep.
And, yeah, one of them, geez, I looked and thought, shit, he looks about 13. It was incredible. So, yeah, that was the thing there. I was pretty confident before the game because of that, but Norwood were good. Yep. And I gave Port a chance against Glenelg because of exactly the same reason.
Yeah, well, Port Adelaide, you've led us beautifully getting up over Glenelg. A little bit of a shock.
You, Craig?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you look at the way the Magpies, I know privately, Malcolm, you and I chatted about it, and Port probably had one of their strongest teams for the year. I mean, Ryan Burton was obviously laid out because he pulled up sore from training Thursday, but There was also talk that he might have been an emergency for the Gold Coast game, but I believe it was option A. But I said expect him back this week. But yeah, I mean, the whole system, I suppose, with the top-up players, like Malcolm said, and good luck to the guys that are getting the games. But, it is boys versus men in some instances where young guys who may not necessarily be up to the level are getting a game. And that's not a criticism of those guys at all. Good luck to them. But yeah, you get 12 to 15 AFL listed players who are used to training with each other 4 times a week, which probably is an advantage over the SANFL guys who, Malcolm, you'd probably know. I'm presuming they train twice, 3 times a week max.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think injury and the nucleus of a team has an impact, and so certainly Port the last few weeks have had a better representation of their AFL listed players.
Sturt getting up over Woodville West Torrens. We sort of expected that, but they're 2 teams that are going to be around the mark.
Well, it effectively still keeps North alive in terms of now there's 1 game behind Woodville West Torrens still.
Well, we thought that might happen the week before.
And they didn't. So out of that, Woodville West Torrens been a little bit disappointing, but Sturt continue just to get the job done. Probably not playing at their best, but getting the job done.
Good teams do that, though.
Exactly. And they're still only 1 game behind Norwood. So, yeah.
Central's just getting up over West Adelaide.
Yeah, I was surprised the game was as close as that after Norwood. We played Westies the week before. So out of that. But again, Central's, they're hanging in there, the Dogs. Yeah.
Hot and cold is probably
a little bit. So, yeah.
A little bit like Essendon, the Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, I think they've been a bit more consistent than that. I've got to be fair.
We're going to talk about that, their next opponent in a minute. But South Adelaide only just going down to North Adelaide was also a little bit of a surprise as well.
And, Craig, I am quite sure that this would be the first time in SANFL history that South v North Adelaide would have been the highest attended game of an SANFL round.
Yeah, right.
That it was at Victor Harbour.
2,800 at Victor Harbour. And Victor Harbour did it really well, is my mail, on the Country Footy Carnival over the whole weekend. I think it was the Flinders getting up on Sunday, and just numbers down at Victor were huge. And, yeah, so I think that's a big tick to the country zones. And I wonder, like Norwood go to the EP once a year, and that will other clubs become and at least go to your country zone once a year. So, and I think Westies do get quite a reasonable crowd at Waikerie for that game, for the Russell Ebert Cup side of things. So I can see that happening more often.
Well, that's a credit to the SANFL, isn't it? I mean, for the SANFL to prosper, let's say, down the track, if Port and Crows do leave the competition, good on them for getting out to the regional areas. I mean, even Southeast would be another opportunity.
Exactly.
Down Mount Gambier or wherever. So, yeah, for each club to have a regional area where they play one home game down there,
even 2.
Why not? Surely it's got to be good for getting people interested in your club, and especially the next generation who may not be able to get to AFL games live. So it's an opportunity for the kids to get involved.
Well, you're going to have this incredible oval at Lyndoch. Well, if I'm Central Districts, I'd be working on that here and now, because you could promote, hey, the winery trip and all that, your tours, your marketability
and
to
it's
promote.
Not that far down the road, really, at the end of the day.
So I think that opens up avenues, that side of things as well.
Well, and you look at the infrastructure that goes around, like Mount Barker and anywhere that's hosted an AFL pre-season game, like, they've got the good goalposts and facilities are improved, et cetera. So it's a win-win for everyone.
That might be something that we talk about a bit more as the season sort of winds up, as to how the SANFL can potentially move things forward. And it sounds like country regions might be one way that they could do it. All right, let's move on to round 15 games. Norwood v Centrals. What do you tip, mate?
Oh, look, I'll go for Norwood. Cooper Murley getting suspended for an average spoil.
Well, it was
Saturday.
very average.
Yeah. So out of that, Cooper, it was the week for players of the home teams colliding with each other. Cooper Murley and Jackson Callow collided. Callow's mouth guard somehow came out, and his teeth connected with Cooper's inner thigh, and he had to have 2 stitches in his thigh from Jacko. So, yeah, that was an incredible one as well. Like, you had the Marshall and Dixon one.
Yep.
You know, that other one where Halia, going back, when he flattened his own player, the only thing he was going to do then was either flatten his own player, which he did, or give a free kick away. That was quite crazy as well. So, yeah, it was the week for bizarre happenings in that way. So, yeah, but I'll go for Nord.
Yep. Your tip, Craig?
Yeah, well, I don't follow the SANFL that closely, but I keep a keen eye on it. Norwood at the parade, no doubt.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's move on. West Adelaide v. the Eagles.
Yeah, I'll go the Eagles, but Westie's in with a chance, but I'll go the Eagles.
For me, it's probably the weather.
Yeah, Eagles should win.
Yeah, Eagles for me as well.
Yep.
Craig's second side, the Eagles.
The Eagles.
On the female side, yes.
North Adelaide take on Adelaide at Prospect, or the Wembley of the South Wembley of the North.
So Adelaide play Friday night, so therefore they don't hold a player back for that. So that means one more will play. Now, depends, just trying to think whether Hinge comes up. I'll go for North, but I may well change my mind on that with Thursday night when the teams come out.
Yep. I'm probably going to go Adelaide on that basis as well. Sturt taking on the Tigers. This one is a mouth-watering clash.
Yeah, on Sunday, I'll probably go and have a look at that at Thomas Farms Oval at Unley. I'll go for Sturt.
I'll go for Sturt as well. What about you, Craig?
Yeah, obviously that would be the RM Williams Cup. I know that's against Norwood, isn't it? So, there'll be plenty of RM Williams out and parade at Unley, and I think Sturt.
Yep, Sturt for me as well. But
yeah, you got that wrong. Come on, Craig.
Glenelg will be.
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
They'll be frothing at the bit after losing last week to Port Adelaide. So I think it's going to be a good test. For me, that's the game of the round. And to finish us off, Port Adelaide v South Adelaide.
Port Adelaide.
Port Adelaide for me.
Well, come on, Craig. I think we know how you go.
Yeah, well, a bit. Well, yeah, I mean, go Port, but there'll be some significant change to the AFL team, so it might actually weaken the Magpies a bit.
We paused for dramatic effect there, that's for sure. All right, let's move on to the netball. The Adelaide Thunderbirds finishing minor premiers, and now will host a major semi-final against the Melbourne Vixens, but not at the Entertainment Centre because of a double booking.
Well, these things happen. So at least they probably needed the 36s, the stadium there for the crowd anyway. So in that way, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, look, they've been on fire. All the best to the Adelaide Thunderbirds.
Absolutely. If they win, obviously they then will host the grand final, which is being played here this year. It's already been pre-organised that Adelaide is the grand final venue. And if they lose, they're back at the Entertainment Centre anyway. So big things there. Trying to go back-to-back would be great. All right, let's move on to tennis very, very quickly. Alex de Minaur, we did talk about it last week's episode, ended up having to withdraw. But is in career best form, finishing Wimbledon at 6 in the world.
6 in the world, yeah. We suspected that. We recorded that last week.
Right at the time.
And said, both of us thought, he's not going to come up after that. And it turned out to be right.
Yep.
And, then to go through to the final, Alcaraz was just way too good. He was fantastic.
He was another level, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It's the case of the changing of the guard, the older and the new. Alcaraz, for all the records that have been kept, obviously, for tennis, he's right up there now with Nadal, Federer and Djokovic in
the same age.
In the age group for winning 3 or 4 Grand Slams.
Yeah, so look.
And grass isn't even his surface.
No, and the bit out of that was just very unusual to see Djokovic not have any answers and be completely outgunned and outclassed, which was, different.
It was. Just from an Australian point of view, Barty was back on the court playing in the invitational doubles.
Yeah, it was good.
She got asked, but she's never going to play. She's already said, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Don't keep pestering her. Let her play and have some fun. Casey Delacqua, I think they came runner-up in the end, but they still had a pretty good tournament. And then from the men's doubles point of view, losing in a thriller.
Yeah, 3 tiebreakers.
7-6, 6-7, 6-7.
And so with the women's final, let's go. I think it was 31 seed versus unseeded. Now, I wondered if that's ever happened before.
In the women's game, not as much, but in the men's game, the last one I can think of is probably Ivanisevic coming through against Rafter as a wild card or unseeded player. So very, very interesting. Your thoughts, Craig, on the tennis, the Wimbledon just finishing up there?
I must admit my interest in tennis has waned in the last few years, but I did Alcaraz, not Alcatraz.
Alcaraz, yeah.
Alcaraz, not Alcatraz. I don't think there'd be too many people in the world complaining about that result after Djokovic's antics, but each to their own.
Let's talk about those antics because it seemed to come across as him being a little bit frustrated.
Yeah, I think it was more than that. It was him coming across as very arrogant, I thought. Okay, we've all got our thoughts on various subjects in life, but surely it was time for him to let it go. But, he keeps fueling the fire and, the mob mentality, once they know, oh, hang on, we're getting into him here, it's just going to follow him for the rest of his career now.
Yeah, he hurt himself with that. It was dumb. It really was.
It is what it is. He made a stance on it, rightly or wrongly. But, it's 4 years ago. Let it go. But
And so, sorry, the women's was
Krejcikova. Playing Paolini.
Yeah, so it was 31st seed
versus
defeating the
7th
seed. Yeah, apologies there.
That's all right.
So, Krejcikova there. Yeah, so
winning in 3 sets.
Just unusual to see in women's tennis, which was Serena Williams.
Well, they had the changing of the guard probably 4 or 5 years earlier than what we've got the men's. And like Craig's just mentioned then that, his interest in the tennis is probably waning a little bit on the basis that the top 3 or 4 who've been so good for the sport have now moved on.
Oh, look, and I can't deny on the women's side of things, as soon as Barty hung her racket up, that sort of ended my interest.
Yep.
Sort of thing. All of a sudden there was an Australian in contention. So, probably the bias came out there in that side of things.
Fair call. Congratulations, obviously, to Krejcikova and also Alcaraz there on winning Wimbledon. Good to see a couple of
Alcaraz from Alcatraz.
Yeah. All right, mate, this is your subject to shine here, Craig. The British Open, what is it, the 152nd running of the British Open, is that right? Have I got my facts right?
Yeah, I think you're right on there.
And who should we be watching out for?
Well, the British Open. July is a lot of people do dry July, but I always call it no sleep July because for European sport it's always the best month of the year, but it means late nights in Australia. So the British Open's the best golf tournament there is. This year it's at Royal Troon, which is famous for a few reasons. It's famous course-wise. It's the little par 3 called the postage stamp. It's only 123 yards long, but the green's probably the width of most lounge rooms or living rooms, and you'll see best players in the world making double bogey because they'll be going from bunker to bunker and things like that. Course is well known over the years, famously in 1989 where Greg Norman drove it into a bunker, which he didn't think he could reach. So you could probably blame Steve Williams for that, but and lost out in a playoff. But more recently, it's the course where Phil Mickelson and Henrik Stenson went head-to-head in 2017, and Stenson shot 63 on the last day to win. So, being a British Open, the golf course set up subject to weather. If the weather's good, the numbers will be low. If the wind gets up, the numbers will be high. So we'll wait and see what the weather forecast looks like. But I'm sure they've made a few changes to the course since the last time it hosted. But I did note there's one par 4 there, which is over 500 yards, 450 metres, which in layman terms, that's a lot of par fives in Adelaide are 450.
Yep.
So, they've lengthened the golf course, and obviously there'd be a lot of new bunkers in there in the driving ranges where these guys are hitting it. So it's certainly going to be an amazing event.
So looking at, obviously, some names that could potentially be up there on the final day, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, two players that have been around quite a bit in the golfing sense. Do we see them being there on the final day, and does the longer course suit somebody like DeChambeau?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. You look at the last two majors, the Live guys have been, obviously DeChambeau won one of them, and certainly been a lot of the Live guys in contention with both of them. But I question the Live guys' preparation. They've just come from Valderrama last week in Spain, which is, I think it was 5 under, won the event, and really tricky golf course, whereas a lot of the other guys played the Scottish Open, which is very similar conditions to what they'll encounter at Troon. So it would surprise me if a Live guy won the Open this week. Scotty Scheffler, his ball striking and his putting will certainly have him in contention. I'd be erring away from him, to be honest. I think there's going to be a European winner, even potentially a British winner. Rory, it's just a matter of how much the pressure gets to him. Rory's had his opportunity this year in a major and came up short. Obviously, everyone's going to be in his back.
How much does that play on his mind?
I think the biggest thing that plays on his mind, it's been a long time since he's won a major. There's no doubt he's one of the best players in the world, but everyone's judged on you're just talking tennis, they're judged by how many majors they win in golf as well. So he's no doubt he's under the most pressure of any player in that field. But he's such a good player. He's been playing well, so I think he'll be up there. I don't know if I'd necessarily put any hard-earned on him, but certainly he will figure at some point.
And from an Australian point of view, who should we be watching out for at the British Open?
Well, there's only 6 Aussies in the field, actually, and there's the usuals, Jason Day and Adam Scott, who good to see is in form. So probably 2 weeks ago I wouldn't have considered Scotty, but last week's effort at Scotland, he's got to come into consideration. Min Woo, who I've mentioned on this podcast previously, British Open is the event that suits him the best, in my opinion. His ball striking and his pure putter and his short game, it'll suit him. So it'd be a nice, good little tip for best Aussie. But also good luck to Elvis Smiley, who I've got to know a little bit through my caddying in the last few years. Liz Smiley's son, the tennis player. Yep. He got through on qualification. Very good player, left-hander. Will have a very, very bright future. But I think if I was tipping at the moment, it wouldn't surprise me Tommy Fleetwood. He's been knocking on the door with British Opens year after year. Victor Hovland, I think, will be up there. And really, even Tyrrell Hatton. I think Tyrrell Hatton might be the one out of the Live guys, would be where I'd be going.
There's a good name for you there, Malcolm.
Yeah.
To add to the list.
Interesting.
So, obviously, the British Open, one of those events that you put on your bucket list to go. What are the highlights that we should be looking out for?
The beauty of watching the British Open is right from the outset. I think it started about 3:00 on Thursday afternoon. It doesn't really matter. The broadcasters leaves the Americans for dead because you actually get to see more than 2 or 3 groups play. The golf course is the main thing. It's a different type of golf to anything else you see around the world. Even in Australia, there's a few courses that replicate it a little bit, but the traditional links golf, where they basically were designed in the sand dunes, and the wind will play such a big part. And like I said, in the next 24 hours, you'll start getting an indication of what that's going to look like. But if it's calm, you will see 63, 64s. But if it's blowing, strap yourselves in. That's when you watch the carnage.
Well, mate, thank you for joining us today on the golf and also some footy topics, because I know that you love your footy as well. But mate, we watch with bated breath with the 152nd Open Championships there in Scotland, and let's see who comes out on top, and we might get you back on to talk obviously some more footy, but some more golf as well. So, thank you, Craig, for joining us today, mate.
Thanks, Craig.
Not a problem, guys. No, I appreciate the invitation, and yeah, absolutely, I love talking sport. So if we're talking about two flies going up the wall, it's happy to talk about it.
Thanks, mate.
We'll put that down for next time. All right, mate. We're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we've got Des O'Dwyer from the Woodville Woodville Football Club, which then became Woodville West Torrens, and obviously the Norwood Football Club. So
and Melbourne.
So we'll start that interview in a minute.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Past players, past legends, past legends.
And tonight we're very pleased to bring you one of the great guys of footy, Des O'Dwyer, former Redleg, Woodville Warrior, Woodville West Torrens player. So 8 games for Melbourne, 78 to 82. Then 21 games, 50 goals for Norwood, 83 to 85. 105 games for Woodville, 7 goals between 86 and 90. Then in the amalgamated side, Woodville West Torrens, 17 games in 91 and 4 goals. Also very good cricketer for Fulham, king of dominating the reunions at Norwood and Kilburn over the last few weeks. Welcome aboard, Des.
Thank you, Malcolm. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Pete. How are you, Pete?
Yeah, very good, thank you. We like to sort of get a little bit of background on how you made your way into football and doing a bit of research. You're from Victoria. We won't hold that against you, but no. Growing up in Shepparton.
Yeah, so it all started back on a little country farm out at a place called Coomboona, which was a little farming district about 12 miles out of Shepparton in country, the heart of country Victoria. Sort of cut my teeth playing juniors, in the school system, and then progressed to playing for a club called Shepparton United in the Golden Valley League. Played a few years there as senior footy, and then sort of found my way into Melbourne. Had 3 or 4 years with Melbourne Footy Club. Matter of fact, they dragged me down for a game when I was only about 16, and in 1978, as a one-off game, happened to have a run against St Kilda at Moorabbin Oval in the mud, and happened to kick a goal with my first kick and all that stuff. So that was all pretty exciting and surreal. I was only 16 at the time, so you can't do that these days, of course. So
and that was under Dennis Jones, who also here was Centrals, I reckon, Dennis Jones.
You've done your research there, Malcolm. Well done, yes. So that was 78. So sort of things were a bit tough back for Melbourne in those late 70s. We hence they got a bit desperate and recruited a young kid from the country of Victoria. So, but I didn't actually go down for a year or so. I actually did my knee in my second last game of that next year, and went down my first season and had the old full knee reco situation, and so I didn't actually start playing again really until about 81. So I debuted in 78 and didn't play my second game until 1981. So it was a long time between drinks, but ended up, and then Ronnie Barassi came in 81. So
how was that, Des? Yeah, Carl Dietrich and Ron Barassi.
Carl Dietrich in 1980. Matter of fact, Carl was the one that encouraged me to just go and have my knee done. I actually, when I first did it, it was sort of a bit shaky and wonky, and he just come up to me pre-season training at the start of 80 and said, just go get it done. He said, I had mine done at your age, it'll be fine. So that's what I did, and so that was the influence that Carl had on me, but I didn't have a lot to do with him other than that. But Barras came in 81, and it was a slow, long burn there as well. I think Barras had 5 years at the club, and I was there for 2 of those, and they were pretty tough years. We still weren't winning too many games, and he was obviously fairly ruthless. It was an experience, that's for sure.
Now, can we just rewind a little bit there? You mentioned you were playing senior football back in the home club there before you got your opportunity to debut against St Kilda.
Yes, yeah.
Were you playing senior football at 11 years of age? Because that's what it sort of sounds like.
Well, I think I debuted for Shep United when I was just 15 or 15 and a half. So, yeah, I was one of these kids that probably matured. I was probably 6'1.5" at 15 and didn't grow too much more from that point. So, yeah, it all clicked fairly. It's just something I naturally did and played senior footy at 15, yeah. So, and 78, I played Teal Cup. We actually came over here for the carnival, and that was 78 was a big year. I played that game for Melbourne and Teal Cup, and then Shep United we participated.
How did you go in the Teal Cup, Des?
Yeah, apparently I was close to All-Australian selection, but missed out. So who knows, mate? Yeah, had a reasonable carnival, and I think South Australia won the carnival, and Mark Wiedemann won the medal that year.
Yes,
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, in those days it was just Victoria. There was no metro and country.
Yep.
It was just one side from Victoria. So. That was great. Little did I know that a few years later I'd be actually living over here and playing for Norwood. So, amazing.
Well, just go back a little bit on Barassi being your coach.
What was that
he?
Like?
We normally ask this right at the end as to who your favourite people are in football, but I want to ask it now. Was he a little bit of an idol of yours, and then you got to play under him?
Look, to be honest, Pete, it's such a long time. I played 6 games under Barras, I suppose. 6 or 7, I think.
As a kid too.
And I was a kid, and I can't really recall. All I just remember really is, the training methods. And I remember one particular night, we got flogged by St Kilda actually, and Barras, we just did circle work all night. I reckon it went for nearly 2.5 hours non-stop in the rain. And he brought us in twice, I reckon, throughout the night, and each time he said, I was nearly going to end it, but then someone dropped the mark. So off you went, sent you back out. So he was uncompromising, and he sort of even the likes of Robbie Flower, who I was lucky enough to play with and be good mates with, even the likes of Robbie sort of struggled with his ways a little bit and lost confidence at times, can you believe? So, fortunately, they don't coach like that anymore. Obviously, in his era, he was amazing and extracted the best out of blokes. That I think it was more or less, if you couldn't cope with his ways, you wouldn't cope in a grand final. That was sort of I think the methodology behind it all.
And he was just so ruthless.
But look, off the ground, mate, you wouldn't meet a nicer bloke than Ron Barassi, and until of recent times, of course, he's passed away now, but. He'd always remember your name. Wouldn't matter how many games you played, he'd still remember you and, engage with you. I went to a couple of Melbourne Footy Club past player functions over the years, and he'd always, say good day and remember you. And he was an amazing person and great. He was the true Mr. Football in my eyes, Ron Barassi for sure.
And in terms of that, what was it like playing with Robbie Flower? Arguably as skilled as any player in the history of the game.
Well, I reckon if there was 30,000, 40,000 at the MCG, I can assure you 38,000 of them were there to watch Robbie Flower.
Yeah.
Not us, that's for sure. He was exquisite, mate. It was poetry in motion. You've seen replays of him.
I loved him.
And I remember one state game. It was over here actually.
He stood KT.
He moved to centre half forward and dominated. So that's the sort of. He was just a freak.
Yeah.
And a lovely bloke to boot as well. One of the nicer guys in footy as well. I remember, I think Dipper Domenico, Rob, he almost felt guilty one day. I think he whacked him, and I don't think he went up to him and nearly apologised. He felt that guilty that he'd almost, it was like shooting Bambi type thing. So he was that popular in the whole league, mate. He was amazing.
So we have to ask. We've spoken to a couple of players who cut their teeth a little bit in the VFL before they made their move over to the SANFL. But what was it like playing at some of the suburban grounds back in the day? Because it's sort of lost a little bit these days with only 3 or 4 venues being used.
Yes, it was daunting. I remember that, going to places like Windy Hill and in particular, my last game was Cardinia Park down at the Cattery. We got that was the only game I played in my last year. 82, and we got flogged by by Geelong, and I stood a bloke by the name of Gary Malarkey.
Good player.
You know,
WA
he was built
boy.
He was built like a proverbial, you know what, and he was very, very, very hard to stand. And but the crowds were incredibly parochial, and then you had your Windy Hills, and I played a couple of games at Moorabbin, and of course at Victoria Park, Collingwood's home ground, and Princess Park with Carlton and Hawthorn were there, I think, and then you'd head out to Waverley and you'd sink 3 inches into the soggy turf out there, you know. So they were interesting times, that's for sure.
What was it like? Because, you know, we look back on history and the VFL almost sort of went broke back in the early to mid-'80s. Was there a sense of that from the playing groups amongst yourselves? Because, you know, I
don't think. Look, there wasn't big money being thrown around. There were certain clubs, I think, like your Collingwood. I remember a big contract going out for a Richmond player that went across to Collingwood. Edwards was his name.
Yeah, Butch Edwards.
Butch Edwards. This is the thing about Ron. I come back to Ron Barassi. Barassi had this vision even before then, that for the game to survive, it needed to go national, and he was even thinking internationally too, probably. So it was the foresight of Ron Barassi's. You know, he pushed that sort of stuff and obviously went up to Sydney and helped out and coached for when they went up there as well. And so he didn't just, it wasn't just him talking, he actually was a doer as well. And, but yeah, certainly, you know, the VFL competition itself was, once it went national, it's, you know, and the TV rights and all that, so it certainly saved the day.
Oh, yeah. That would have been right at the end of your time there, Des.
That's why I asked.
Where Collingwood...
Yeah, it was 80, the year I finished 82, I reckon South Melbourne ended up in Sydney. Either they were playing games on
the Sunday,
games, or they actually relocated. I can't quite remember.
I reckon it was 82. But you had Collingwood and Richmond almost trying to kill each other with recruiting players. With Philip Walsh, there was David Cloak, Rains. It was incredible. It was just quite crazy.
Very true. So I mean, there was money being thrown around that probably these clubs probably didn't have, I guess, and then you had certain clubs over the journey that have been very, very close to insolvency. So but I think the way the AFL's got it structured now, it's, you know, they're still pouring lots of money up north, of course, but it's because of the TV rights that they've managed to you know, keep all these clubs, and the location of a footy club now is not as critical as it was probably 10 years ago. Like we all say, there's too many teams in Victoria, which there probably are, but at the end of the day, there's this massive pool of money from TV that
which governs it.
So, and that keeps everyone alive. So unless they can relocate clubs, they won't be chopping anyone out of Melbourne, I wouldn't have thought.
So, Des, then you moved over to Norwood. Transfer employment, was that with the bank then, with the National Bank then?
It was, So Melbourne, there's a couple of things there. Melbourne had a connection with Norwood through Ross Dillon, and there was other people as well. So there was obviously being
Stephen
Red and
Curley
Blue as well. Steve Curley, and there's other names I can't quite recall, but there was a solid connection. And the other thing was there was Red and Blue, of course, and of course my other club, my first club, Shepyard and Yard, they were Red and Blue Demons as well. So I went Red and Blue, Red and Blue, Red and Blue. So
nothing wrong with that.
Well, fair to say it's in the blood then.
It was in the blood, red and blue running through the veins for sure. So, it was. I remember what happened was my last game for Melbourne was a reserves game. It was my 21st birthday actually. I actually kicked 8 in my last game, and we were playing South Melbourne on the MCG. And a couple of weeks before, I'd been given the heads up by Stan Elves, who was the Barassa's one of his assistants, who said, "Look, Gezi, we're going to move you on." Mate, I've only had two or 3 years there, not even that, not a lot of footy. But anyway, I said, "Oh yeah, fair enough." And I kicked 8 in the last game on the G, and I remember going up to Stan. I said, "Oh, Stan, can I stay now?" He said, "No, sorry, Desi, but you go and we'll help you out and do this and do that." So as it turned out, I ended up, I went over to Perth for a weekend and had a run with Subiaco, and just didn't really like that at all, to say the least. And then came in and had to come over, and Nerio Ferrario picked me up at the airport, and we shot up to Victor Harbour and went to the famous Mount Brecon camps.
Oh, wow.
And I met all the lads. I got there. Fortunately, I got there Friday night, so I missed that run on the Friday night, which was a killer.
Yes.
But I had the Saturday and Sunday with them, so it was a solid session. But it was probably more solid on the Friday night and the Saturday night
exactly
on the you know what.
So the Crown effectively got you to the parade.
There's no look. Just love the blokes, love the vibe. Obviously, Norwood were running premiers in '82.
Yep.
You know, Greg Turbull was one of the first blokes to come up to me and welcome me, and I'll never forget that. And I've told him that. So, the great Greg Turbull, and so I just felt right and didn't hesitate to come across. And Wally was in charge of it all, of course, and got it organised and got me signed up. And I was by the February of '83, I'd moved across. Got a transfer in the National Bank, and the rest is history. So had 3.5 fantastic years at the Norwood Footy Club. It's still a big part of my love of footy, and as you know, I went to the Norwood, the '84. Even though I didn't play in the '84 Premiership, I went across the other week and had a great day and caught up with everyone, which was fantastic. And Barmy was there, and it's great to see him, and he's looking fantastic. And so all the boys was terrific. So,
and thank you for that Woodville West Torrens bit too, where I got there and there was a bit of a stuff-up table. Greatly appreciated your help with that day too.
No worries. Yeah, no, that was a great day as well. And Barmy was a guest speaker that day as well. So, actually, I dropped Barmy home that night. So, me and Barmy are best of mates, as we always have been.
Well,
we'll get into that a bit later, Des.
Talking about Barmy, you've gone from Barassi, and then you've come over to the SANFL, and you've got Barmy as a coach. What are your thoughts on him from the inside? Because from the outside, it looked like he had a good relationship with all his players.
He was fantastic. And look, one thing I've always said is, my goal would have been to play regular senior footy under Neil Barmer. Nothing would have satisfied me more. Unfortunately, that didn't happen to the extent that I would have loved. People say to me over the journey, Barmy was hard on you, this and that. And I said, I always say no. I just wasn't consistent enough. I just didn't, I'd have great games and then I'd have shit games, excuse the French. So it wasn't Neil Barmer. He was a very good analysis of players. And, at the time I wasn't cutting the mustard. And look, I think I came good eventually when I went to Woodville and probably had a bit more fire in the belly, obviously trying to prove certain people and wrong maybe, and that sort of drives you and so forth. And I got over some horrible injuries I had at Norwood as well. I missed a lot of footy at the Norwood Footy Club.
Now, there's one thing with Googling today, and I remember, obviously, but I could not find it. When did you kick the 10 goals in the trial game for Norwood?
I reckon that was my first game.
That's what I thought. And I reckon
that was at the parade.
Against North Adelaide. Yep.
And I stood a bloke by the name of Paul Arnold. So
he was a good player too.
Yeah. So
I reckon out of that, it's a little bit like Hooksy's 5 4s in a row in the Centenary Test. It wasn't the best thing in the end, because I think you got, from that day forward, effectively you were regarded as you must play forward at Norwood. And then, you, as you said, you're inconsistent. You go down the reserves and you quite often play at centre-half back in the reserves.
Yes.
And
I played a lot of defensive footy in the reserves, but then when an opportunity came up in the A's, I would go. Problem was, Malcolm, of course, we had one of the best defensive units in the country, really. We had, Tommy Warhurst, Bruce Winner, Greg Nicholson that first year. We had Paul Noble floating around early days as well.
Malcolm Noble, you bet.
Jimmy Teal was still around the place. You know more names than me. So Danny Jenkins, of course.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty tough unit to crack into, as the forward line was, just quietly with, Neville Roberts. They were reigning premiers when I got there, and it was one of the things I do remember coming across is particularly '83. Obviously, my first year was the fact that I'd played some senior footy the previous couple of years for Melbourne, and then I remember West Adelaide when in that '83 season, and I walked away from that year thinking, gee whiz, that side would probably make the final 5 or 8.
I agree. They were a brilliant side. Yeah.
So the standard, was, all I'll say was it was no harder trying to get a game for Melbourne that was at Norwood to some extent. So, but I'm not kidding myself in terms of, the VFL certainly was, stronger comp. It was a different type of footy though. It was the SANFL footy was a highly skilled competition, whereas probably the VFL back then was brute strength, and if you didn't have the physicality, you got pushed aside a bit more. So
that's how Barmy said it as well. In terms of highly skilled, because and then he gets to Norwood, and he was a young coach at Norwood, and it
amazing.
was more the influence of the senior guys with Bruce Winter and Stazza, and that went, hang on, we haven't got a Royce Hart at centre half-forward here, Barmy. We're going to have to be a bit smarter because Barmy, the Tom Hafey, just beat it long to Royce. Well, So.
But I'll never forget Barmy's, and it still works today. Hit top of the square. That is, as a fullback, you do not want the ball landing top of the square, because that is the worst area. So sides that still don't do that much is at their peril. So, and that was Tommy Hafey's pretty much, get the ball in top of the get it up there for Barry Richardson, Royce Hart, whoever was up there, and it was a formula that worked pretty well because everyone knew what you were doing, and your small forwards were able to crumb off those blokes. And as we know, in 1980, one of those smalls was young Kevin Bartlett kicking 7 and in a grand final in 1980 against Collingwood. So it sort of worked.
So we have to ask, we talked about the Victorian suburban grounds. You come over to South Australia. What are your thoughts were at the time of the suburban grounds, considering Norwood is probably one of those traditional grounds that still, even to today, holds a special place in football history?
Well, I think the entire footy world's been fortunate enough to witness what Norwood Oval is to the game, and I think it's one of the most beautiful, magnificent boutique ovals in the world. I mean, I was lucky enough to be at Lord's last year, and it's an amazing oval. But I tell you what, you put 15,000, 20,000, whatever it is, at Norwood Oval, it doesn't get much better. And it's to me is one of the best grounds to play on in terms of the crowd, the atmosphere, the whole deal. So
well, the Greater Western Stand's effectively on top of you, and just it is a unique. I think it's the best suburban ground here. I'm a Nord man, and say people to say you're biased, but I still think it's convincingly the best ground.
Well, I might be biased too, Malcolm, but I 100% agree. So, look, Woodville Oval's a great ground.
Yeah,
it's a footy ground. It's it's no different to West Adelaide's and Central's. They're all very similar. Yeah. But that's the uniqueness of Norwood Oval. That is why it is what it is. It's just so unique. And I've been I'll never forget my first senior game there. We played Sturt on this April day. It was a beautiful day. Come up out of the race, and wow, the atmosphere was incredible. And that's something I'll always remember. Yeah, great ground, mate.
And traditional rivals, obviously Port Adelaide. How quickly were you indoctrinated into the hatred of Port Adelaide?
Yes, it didn't take long, Pete. That's for sure. So it sort of resonated across the border prior to that. Before I got here, I reckon. So it's a fantastic rivalry, and so that 84 premiership, obviously, and was amazing. And then I was fortunate enough to, when I did get across to Woodville, we ended up beating Port Adelaide in that's when I was playing for Woodville, beating Port Adelaide in an Escort Cup final. So there is nothing more special than beating Port Adelaide, I can tell you, and that's for sure. But the Norwood rivalry and the Port is second to none, for sure.
One other game we've got to ask you when you're at Norwood is you're kicking 10 against Sturt there, so that's got to have a bit of a place in your history mind.
Gee, I can't remember that. No, yes. I can remember. Yeah,
I was about to say bullshit.
Yeah, that was a bit of a build up to that game. To be honest, it was I hadn't played for a long time, and I had that osteopubis groin thing. Aishi had the issues as well, and ended up having surgeries ended up having both sides done in the finish. So I missed nearly most of 84 was just a write-off, really.
Yeah.
And then the other side went at the start of 85. So here we are again. I'm having more surgery at the start of 85. Well, we didn't muck around this time. I went straight and had the surgery, and within, I think I was playing by about round 8 or 9 or something, And look, and I was playing some terrific footy, and I just couldn't, when I was going to get a bit of a go, and I don't think I'd played a senior game since since 83. So I didn't play a senior game in 84.
No.
So I was well into 85, and I actually said, Barmy, could we have a catch up and have a chat? And he said, yeah, sure, come over after training tonight. Yeah, blah, blah, which I did, and I went around there and we sat down, and I said, look, mate, I've left my family, and I'm over interstate. I'm over here to play senior footy, not reserves. And I said, look, I don't think I can play any better, and I don't seem to be getting a look in. And he said, okay, well, look, I'll tell you what, I'll have a look at you this week, and we'll see how we go. So I played another reasonable game against South Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, and they picked me. Neville got injured, I think, and then I got a game. That's right. No, Neville got injured the next one, so I got a game on the bench. That's right. And then the next week we played Sturt, and Neville Roberts was injured, so I ended up playing full forward for the whole game, and had a day out and kicked the 10. And but I was keen as mustard. I can tell you, I've been a long time in the weight. So and then I finished off playing seniors for the rest of the year. Unfortunately, we went out in straight sets in 85, which was disappointing. So that was coming off the back of 84. So maybe there was a little bit of premiership hangover. Who knows? But we probably should have done better, but unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Then how did it arrive with you heading over to Pekka Park where the pasties are spicier, Des?
So, that's another story. So James Fantasia had gone across at the end of 85. He was over there at the commencement of 86. And anyway, that's right. So we had a trial game up at Balaclava, and I got cleaned up by this bloke called Shane Towie Moore. I was playing in the reserves, and it was a stinking hot day at Balaclava, and he's taken me out, and he's snapped my collarbone. So here we go again, another major injury. And as I'm walking off, I looked over to Barmy, and I think it was Black Duck, and I pulled my jumper down, and the bone wasn't protruding through the skin, but it was poking out, and they could see that I had a busted collarbone. And they both put their hands in their heads and heads in their hands and shook their heads. And I walked off, and I sort of knew then I was pretty well done. I thought, so I need a change of scenery at this injury stuff. But anyway, came back and played a couple of reserves games, and keeping in mind I'd played, kicked that 10 towards the back end of 85, and found myself not even getting a game in the reserves. And
looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary Creeves, your dedicated local agent from Owens Casserly Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary Creeves at Owens Casserly Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen. And we thank Gary there for his continued sponsorship. But Des, we've split into a couple of different episodes like we've done with most of our interviews, but it was great to have Craig on and obviously talk football, but also talk a bit of golf as well. So we thank him for that. All right, mate, we're going to have to scoot really quickly into the happy days and extra time big finish today.
Yep.
Happy days.
All right, happy birthday to James Borlays from the Adelaide Football Club, recruited to the Crows as a Category B rookie player in 2020 and then made his debut in 2023.
Did catch up with his parents on Saturday at Parade. Probably, he actually, James, to his credit, had a pretty good duel with Jackson Callow, considering how much the ball Norwood were having. I thought he was high up in Adelaide's best players on the weekend.
Yes, Borlays was born in Cairo, Egypt. Yep. It's not a place you think of an Australian rules footballer coming from, but while his father worked as a commodity trader abroad, the Borlays family moved to Melbourne for several months after he was born and then relocated to Adelaide 4 years later. Borlase played junior football at the Unley Jets. Geez, they've produced some pretty good players throughout their journey, the Unley Jets. I think Scotty Thompson's coaching out there these days.
Yep.
And he made his under-18 All-Australian team, played in the under-17 Futures game at the MCG of the 2019 Grand Final. That's a bit of a thrill that we don't really see too much of anymore.
Yeah, it still happens. Probably doesn't get as much publicity, that's all. But, yeah, look, his lack of pace is still the real problem. He's still very much an iffy, and I think he's a huge next few weeks to see whether he stays on the list.
Yeah.
But I thought he was good on Saturday.
He's not let them down. And
No.
the thing is, though, he's only 22 years of age. So they do have age on his side, but there are players in that back line that have probably got that spot for a little while yet, haven't they?
All I'd be doing with him is trying to get his first 3 to 5 yards quicker off the mark.
And that's Darren Burgess's job over the summer,
That's
isn't
what
it?
I would be doing with him. I think everything else, I think he's okay.
He's a man mountain, really, when you think about it.
Well, he always has been a big. Look, he was big as a junior. I remember playing, coaching against him in Sapsaza, and he was big then as a kid. So yeah.
Still thought big at one end and Borlase potentially big at the other end.
Yeah.
Could be good. All right, in December 2020, Borlase was drafted, obviously, by the Crows, although his father, Darryl, played 246 games with Port Adelaide.
Yep.
He was ineligible because of the father-son prospect. How does that happen, really?
Because
He's played
it's games.
246
I know, it's crazy.
games.
It was the same thing with Ross Gibbs.
Yep.
Ross Gibbs was ineligible because he hadn't played 300 in the time. He was 291 games ineligible.
It's crazy.
Crap.
In 2021, Borlase finished runner-up in Adelaide's SANFL Club Champion Award. So I think he's a good project player for them to hang on to.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. 1979, David Gower, 200 for England as they score 5 for 633 against India in Edgbaston. You don't see that many runs these days.
As elegant as a player you'll ever see, as effortless. The left-hander, beautiful, beautiful to watch. Very similar to Mark Ward, did it so effortlessly.
Yep. I knew you'd like that one there. Big score, though, at 5 for 633 runs galore. 1932, two greats meet for the first time. An injured Babe Ruth entertains touring Australian cricketers in his private box at Yankee Stadium as the New York Yankees beat Chicago White Sox 7-2. The Babe meets the Don.
Yes, yeah, incredible, really. Yeah.
Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall there just to hear about how they go about it?
Superstars, yeah.
It's unbelievable. Tennis, 2017, Wimbledon men's tennis, Roger Federer beats Marlin Cilic of 6-3, 6-1, 6-4 for a record 8th Wimbledon men's title.
And he looks safe with that 8th at the moment. I reckon he would have been punching the air a little bit as
I think Alcaraz might run him down, but
maybe. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And in 1991, I thought you might like this one. It's a bit of a baseball sort of theme here. Cal Ripken plays his 1500th consecutive game of baseball.
Ridiculous.
That is unbelievable.
That's bullshit. That's ridiculous. That's incredible.
That is absolutely crazy. All right, mate, we're going to scoot into the extra time big finish.
Yep.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, let's talk cricket. Jimmy Anderson or James Anderson retires from cricket. 149 wickets versus India and 117 versus Australia. What are your thoughts, mate?
Look, he's a very good bowler who had incredible longevity. Massive respect for his longevity. Is he in my top all-time bowlers? No. In terms of that, he wasn't great out here. He was a far better bowler if it was cloudy, sort of thing. Look, he was a good bowler, but, I think people saying he's the greatest because he's taken the most number of wickets. Well, hang on, he played so many games. He actually averaged, I think it's 36 out here in the end. And, look, good bowler, very good bowler, but, I'll leave it at that.
David Warner won't be considered for the 2025 T20 and One Day Series World Championships. Mate, I'm going to throw it out there. He's going to try and make more comebacks than Johnny Farnham.
No, he'll play truckload of 2020 as a higher gun. I don't think we'll hear his name mentioned for Australia ever again.
Fair call. All right, let's talk basketball. The Boomers go down in a tight, hard-fought contest against the US Dream Team.
Yeah, down by 24 at one stage and come back to lose by 6. So
98 to 92.
Yeah, encouraging signs for the Olympics.
Absolutely. All right, State of Origin, Game 3 decider.
Yeah.
Who you got, mate? Who you got, Queensland or New South Wales?
Oh, look, if in doubt, and it's in Queensland, if in doubt, go Queensland.
And they did get touched up in Game 2, so they're going to come out smarting.
Yep.
All right, soccer, we did talk with Mary a couple of weeks ago. England got out of jail to take their place in the final versus Spain.
Yes.
Spain obviously 1-0 up. England equalise, and Spain go ahead and end up winning the Euro Championships.
I thought Spain looked the best side throughout the whole of it. Followed it reasonably closely, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you did have a vested interest, though. You were hoping for a couple of players to play well to help the transfer fees.
I was hoping Eze would come off the bench. If he'd come off the bench and scored the winner for England,
couple of million.
You would have heard me from Highbury, because it would have meant plenty for QPR.
Yep.
Look, out of that regard, but I just thought Spain were the best side and the deserved winners.
Yeah, and we did sort of say that quarter final, whoever sort of went through and won that would probably end up winning it, but. England just find a way, but unfortunately their 58-year drought continues. It's not a good sign. It's almost as long as St Kilda's premiership drought.
There's huge similarities with St Kilda and England.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk baseball. MLB draft pick.
Yeah, you called it last week.
I did call it. He ends up going number 1 pick and heading to the Cleveland Guardians, formerly the Cleveland Indians.
Incredible. Fantastic.
It's great for Australian baseball. I mean, we've been a little bit closer to it in the last 2 years, obviously, with the Adelaide bite or the Giants
and all that sort of
coming back into the fore and winning after such a long period of not going so well. This can only be good for Australian baseball.
Yeah, very much so. Yep. Great result.
Absolutely. All right, let's finish off very quickly. A couple of rapid-fire questions. The Olympics, Jessica Hull makes a statement with a world record in the 2,000-metre just in time for the Olympics.
It's huge. Come on. How awesome would it be for Australia to win some track and field gold medals?
Well, we did talk a couple of weeks ago about what are you sort of looking forward to.
Yeah.
We obviously look forward to the swimming because we do reasonably well, but second week of the Olympics might have some interest with some medal opportunities.
She certainly plucked my interest up a fair bit more in that
Absolutely,
regard.
fair call. Would 16 teams be the ideal number for the AFL?
Yes.
Yep. And last question, mate, does a former player of a team make them the obvious choice for a club looking for a coach?
It shouldn't, but it quite often does. But even just the promotion, like Dean Cox is the classic example
Well,
there.
this is why I bring it up.
But his record, he is very highly regarded at Sydney, so he's had his apprenticeship, so all of a sudden he does become a big chance.
I did sort of see a little bit of a report that he's not interested in the job, that's interesting that would happen, but
wait and see on that one.
2 team towns can do that he may not want to step back into that frame of mind where he lived it.
He might be a person who's happy staying an assistant.
Yep.
You're on pretty good coin for nowhere near as much stress.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And then, obviously, we talked with Craig a little bit earlier about Josh Carr.
Yeah, and look, Cox could be the concession planning for after Longmire, so who knows? Yeah.
Yep. All right, mate. We're going to wrap it up there. Yep. No good, the bad, the ugly for this week. We've had plenty to talk about. We thank Craig Martin for his time. I thank you once again for your time.
And thank you to Des O'Dwyer.
We thank Des O'Dwyer for his time. As we said, we're going to split that one up as we usually do. But as per usual, mate, we promise to do better.
Thanks, mate.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.